October 24th, 1929. Black Thursday. In just 6 hours, Americans lost $14 billion. That was more than the entire Canadian economy at the time. 13 million shares were sold in panic. Phone lines were jammed. Communication with the stock exchange completely broke down. And at that moment, something much bigger had already begun. A system was starting to collapse. But here's the most striking part. This collapse started with a single decision. One man, Charles Mitchell, known as Sunshine Charlie, America's most trusted banker, and the man who ignited the Great Depression. And the strange part? He believed he was saving the economy 7 months before the crash. Mitchell said something. It sounded reassuring, but that sentence was what set everything in motion. So what happened next? A collapse that lasted 10 years. 25 million people lost their jobs. 1 out of every 4. 5,000 banks shut down. Millions of people lost their savings overnight. 2 million Americans became homeless. Families began living in cardboard boxes. These places were called Hoovervilles. Suicide rates increased by 30% in a country that had just been the richest in the world. People were now standing in bread lines. So, how did it all begin? The 1920s. America's golden age. The roaring 20s. Ford cars. Radios in every home. Jazz music. Rising skyscrapers. Everything looked perfect, as if prosperity would last forever. And right at that moment, a man stepped onto the stage. Charles Mitchell. He was born in 1877 into a simple farmer's family. Nothing suggested that he would one day become America's most powerful banker. But in 1919, he became the head of the largest bank in the country. And from that moment on, everything changed. Mitchell had an idea. Simple, powerful, but dangerous. Until then, the stock market was a game played only by the rich. But Mitchell thought differently. Every American should be an investor, he said. And then he made the move that changed history. Banks were no longer just holding money, they were selling dreams. Invest in the American dream. Salespeople were no longer bankers, they were dream merchants. Invest just $15 a month. Get rich. Make your family proud. And people believed it. But the real danger was inside the system. Now people could invest. With money they didn't even have. Put down just 10%. Borrow the rest. $100. Became $1,000 in stocks. If prices went up, you made money. But if they fell, you lost everything. This wasn't just investing. This was a system, ready to explode. Between 1925 and 1929, stocks bought on credit increased fourfold. 10 million Americans entered the market. Teachers mortgaged their homes. Farmers sold their livestock. Workers invested their salaries. Everyone believed they were going to get rich. But no one saw this. The system was built on debt. By 1929, the economy was slowing down. But the stock market kept rising. And then the warning came. The Federal Reserve said, "This is unsustainable." The market started to fall. Panic began to spread, and at that moment, Mitchell stepped in again. "We will support the market. We will provide unlimited liquidity." One sentence, and the market rose again. But in reality, the collapse had only been delayed. The summer of 1929 was pure madness. Everyone was investing, even children. But the truth was 90% of the money in the market was borrowed, which meant The system was extremely fragile. And then, the moment came. October 24th, 1929. Large investors began to sell, first quietly, then all at once. Panic began. Everyone wanted to sell, but no one wanted to buy. The domino effect had started. Prices fell. Banks demanded money. People were forced to sell. The market fell even more. And then, October 29th, Black Tuesday. $14 billion. Vanished. But the real loss was not money. It was lives. People committed suicide. Families lost their homes. An entire generation lost its dreams. And Mitchell? "I just gave people an opportunity," he said. But history tells a different story, not as a savior, but as the architect of a disaster. After that, the system changed. New laws were introduced. Banks were separated. Regulations were tightened. But the story doesn't end here. Because today, we are seeing the same patterns again. Millions of people are investing through their phones with borrowed money. With the same promises, everyone can get rich. But history tells us one thing. It doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So next time you hear promises of easy money, remember Sunshine Charlie and ask yourself, who is really winning?